So hi. I'm, as you've all seen, because it's just like a little room of us, I'm freaking out right now because this is such a weird, just kind of like constellation of people. So like people in the back, hi, thank you. I just, they were, not to put you on the spot, they were the first ones here, and I saw you guys walk in and I was just like, so happy to see you, because it felt like watching my high school self kind of walk into a bookstore and do what you're doing, and I just loved seeing that. But thank you all for coming. There are high school friends here, there are work friends here, there are new friends here. My college roommate is here, who, if you've read the book, is in here. And we could talk about that. We'll talk about that later. So I grew up on Long Island, which you may or may not know, not this part of Long Island. I grew up, I always say, on the Queens border, because that's true. I grew up in North Woodmere. And so this part of Long Island, my friend Nicole and I drove in, and we also went to high school together. And we were like, what is this magical, beautiful, Stars Hollow-y place? It feels very different from where we grew up. And it was trippy because we were listening to like Sirius 80 station, and it was just playing like, the last song we heard when we pulled in was Mickey, which was by Tony Basil, which was my, I think, first routine ever at Arlene and Kathy's School of Dance, which I know some of you also went to. So I am so privileged and grateful to be here. I wrote this book, I'll Look So Hot in a Coffin, and other thoughts I used to have about my body. Basically, it took me 20 years on and off to write it, honestly. And it's very much about living with this very rare congenital disorder that deforms parts of my body, and the way that has kind of, pardon my French, fucked with my head over my lifetime. And it's a very specific story, but I think very universal, or I hope very universal, because I think that all of us probably suffer from some form of imposter syndrome or inferiority complex or whatever it is. And it sort of feels like maybe it was getting better for a while, and now it's kind of getting harder, thanks to things like the manosphere and other wonderful gifts that modern society has brought us. So I'm just gonna read a little bit of the prologue and then open it up to just like chat or ask any questions you want. I was telling Tracy, who, thank you for inviting me, Tracy invited me here. I would much rather talk with you than at you. So let's do that. I'll read a little bit and then we'll see what you guys want to talk about. Cool? Yeah. Cool, okay. Preface. One day, I'll look like everyone else. So I'm, as if you've read the book, you know this, I have ADHD. So I interrupt myself and others a lot. So I kind of want to interrupt myself already to tell you a little story, which is that the title of the book was not always I'll Look So Hot in a Coffin. For a very long time, it was called Such a Pretty Face, and that was kind of just something I slapped on there a long time ago. And the title of the preface was I'll Look So Hot in a Coffin. And we were working on covers and we were trying things and nothing was working. And finally, the editor-in-chief of my imprint said, I find that when you're struggling to make a cover work, sometimes the title's the problem. And it had never occurred to me to change the title. And it's not because I particularly loved Such a Pretty Face as a title, although it did feel very resonant to me. It's been a very interesting experiment. Every woman I've ever said that title to understands exactly what it means. I recently was talking to a guy friend and he's like, is that a lyric to a song? And I was like, no, that's just something that every woman has heard at some point in her life. And it was actually a really good kind of confirmation that changing the title was a good idea, because it didn't resonate with everybody. Whereas I'll Look So Hot in a Coffin, I am hopeful, is the thing that makes you go, what the fuck is that? I want to read it. So, okay. That's my little spiel. All right, here we go. Once I'm dead, I'll have a symmetrical tush, legs that match, and a flat back. I'll be so thin, I'll be skeletal. This is something I used to tell myself whenever my quest to change or shrink my deformed body was failing, which was often. One day, in a coffin, I'll look like everyone else. I was born with a congenital vascular disorder, Klippel-Trenaunay syndrome. named for the French doctors who discovered it. KT affects anywhere from 1 to 5 in every 100,000 people and is unique to every person who has it. It can be a disability or even a life threatener for some, not for others. I'm one of the lucky ones, but I do live in a body that is significantly, visibly different from most. There's a hypertrophy of tissue on my back, rendering it giant, blobby, lopsided, and not very back-like. My torso, right leg, and bottom are marked by soft, uneven malformations and a port wine stain so big it looks like a spilled bottle of sun-faded Cabernet. These idiosyncrasies beget others. Tilted posture, jutting cervical spine, anemia, probably. No doctor I've talked to has been able to conclusively prove the connection, but everyone I've met with KT is iron deficient. I got my varicose veins embolized in my 30s, and the doctor, who has lots of patients with KT, said about my insides afterward, "We saw some crazy anatomy in there, even by our standards." More recently, a hiatal hernia required surgery that revealed more things I'd never known. My organs were squished. My stomach was up in my chest. Nothing was quite where it should be. Depending on my angles and the viewer's narcissism, some people meet me and never notice the deformity. Others think I'm pregnant. Others think I'm fat, which I also am, though not all parts of me are. My left leg is thin and muscular, my fingers are long and bony. And my weight fluctuates as much as is inevitable for anyone who has spent her whole life trying to control it. Some people look at me and then ask questions that seem like non sequiturs. Are you a dancer? Are you an athlete? I guess because they're trying in real time to process a body they can't make sense of. Some just squish up their faces in confusion. Been there, babes. When I'm naked from certain angles, I look sort of like a purple yam, but one of the misfits people discard in favor of more symmetrical tubers. I always grab the weirdos when I'm grocery shopping, out of solidarity. My face, I have been told since I was little, is pretty. Whether it is or isn't is, of course, subjective, and also doesn't really matter. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't, except in the way it split me in two very early on. My face was good and my body was bad. Some people have told me I'm the prettiest person they've ever seen. Others have insinuated that I am so opposite of pretty, I do not deserve to live. I'm sure many people think I'm forgettable and average, if average is meant to mean nothing special and not what it actually means. I have sometimes felt like all of these things simultaneously, which is as much of a mindfuck as it sounds like. For a long time, when I was told I had a pretty face, I took it to be a compliment, but an asterisk one, a pity, because look at the rest of me. Such a pretty face, said with a rueful shake of the head and a tisk-tisk. What a waste, what a loss. I viewed myself in pieces, which isn't really the way to view a self, especially when it's your own. I was shockingly innocent about my body for a very long time because I spent most of my life avoiding it. The best way I can describe my relationship to my back, for example, is that I would recognize it in a lineup, but could not accurately describe it for a sketch artist. Could you describe yours? I don't know how well a person is supposed to know her back. When I was forced to look at my body, when others compelled me to, I knew neither what to make of it, nor what possibility it held. I had spent so much time thinking that maybe, yes, once my insides were worm food, the remaining bits of bone would look like everyone else's. But eventually, thank God, a more important question crossed my mind. What's so great about looking like everyone else, especially when you're dead? I no longer care what people experience when they look at me. I care only what I experience, and what I experience is gratitude. Today I realize that my body is just my body, nothing more and nothing less. I recognize that it is not perfect, and it is not flawless, and that perfect and flawless are social constructs that are slowly but surely disintegrating as fat bodies and differently abled bodies and otherwise marginalized bodies increasingly refuse to be sidelined or pressured to change or stopped from changing if change is what makes a particular body feel right. Most important, most days, I'm able to remember that this is the only body I've got. Take it or leave it. And it's a monumental waste of time to spend one more minute hating myself, especially when there are so many other people willing and happy to do that for me. I don't want to make it sound easy because it isn't and wasn't. First came a decision to want to find happiness, then therapy as a geolocation tool. That took a long time. Then antidepressants, more therapy, age, which is the hands down best antidote to giving a fuck. It was all hard, but hard is not impossible. I believe we're on the cusp of a movement to uplift the multitudes of us who live in unique bodies, who've perhaps felt allyship with disabled and trans and fat liberation communities, but have never had a place of our own. I hope this book can be a part of it. I hope it can even inspire and enlighten people with bodies that are technically, by society standards, normal, who may be unintentionally and unwittingly benefiting from the marginalization of others, but who have also likely had their own moments of feeling not good enough, because the world is nothing if not hard on people, and especially hard on women. Some of us fall into multiple camps. Yes, I am deformed, but I'm also a small fat, cis-het woman with pretty privilege. I'm a fair-skinned Jew, which means I benefit from white privilege, while white nationalists chant Jews will not replace us, and bigots who share no other common ground when neo-Nazis cheer them on. I've been fortunate in ways that people in other marginalized communities, and even some in the KT community, have not. I've been an outsider and an insider simultaneously. Sometimes I thought the only consistent thing about me is my not fitting in anywhere perfectly. But a lot of people think that about themselves. And if enough of us feel like outsiders, doesn't that sort of make us the insiders? It's all been really confusing. I call my body unconventional because I have not yet thought of a better word. It's a placeholder. As conventions change, as we change them, so will my adjective. This is one story, mine, of a lived experience. The way I sometimes feel unsafe moving through the world, the way fatness and my disorder have been conflated and confused, the way dating has been hard for me, the way my view of myself has been both undermined and propped up by my love of fashion, the way my body has felt like public property sometimes, with people perfectly comfortable asking me questions about it or even touching it, as if I have given them permission simply by existing. This is also a story about what it means to be sick or spent or defiantly insistent that you're not, in a culture that rewards overwork and that glossy sheen of burnout. And a world that prizes thinness above all else, including mental health, which can wither in its pursuit. Throughout my life, I've been told and told myself to pull myself up by my unevenly worn bootstraps and push myself and soldier on and muscle through and diet, diet, diet. It has all been a way of making myself feel normal. I've equated a lack of energy with a lack of drive, motivation, and ambition, and rallied against the instinct to rest even when it's meant I can barely lift myself out of bed. Anytime I felt the ultimate shame of laziness, I blamed myself instead of empathically understanding that there's a constellation of valid reasons for my exhaustion, and also that all reasons are valid when one needs or wants to just sit down and stop for a while. I have generalized anxiety disorder. I have S-curve scoliosis. I learned very late, like a lot of women, ADHD. I have 2 legs that are not the same weight or length and therefore make walking different for me than for other people. I have flat feet and bad rotator cuffs. For a long time, none of those things mattered when it came to self-compassion. They seemed like cop-outs and excuses, but I'm working on that and finally being kinder to myself, wondering instead, why wouldn't I be tired? Why wouldn't walking around in this body take an effort? Why wouldn't just existing in this world, no matter what your body is like, knock the wind out of you sometimes? At 47, I hurt in ways I didn't used to. When the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once came out, I thought that might make a nice title for the list of my body parts that ache and when. Some of it's age, some of it's my size. I hesitate to say that. Fatness does not equal out of shapeness, but this is part of my deprogramming too. I do not need to stack up to thin people. I do not need to prove that I am capable of doing everything they can. I do not owe them that. I need to do the much harder job of persuading people that those of us who are fat or deformed or disabled or all of the above need not do everything our thin, conventional peers do in order to deserve dignity and respect. I want people who have felt left out or isolated or one of a kind in a way that feels synonymous with alone or wrong or inadequate to read my book and think, fuck yes, this. Because the power of allyship and understanding goes a very long way. I'm pretty sure it saved my life. I want those of us who have felt a sort of safety in flittering at the margins and hydroplaning on the surface to feel able and deserving of plunging their grubby little mitts into life and eating up every last bit of it. I want us to demand to be seen. Right now, when I watch TV and films or flip through magazines, I think, where the hell are we? Where's the alopecia? Where are the cleft palates? Where are the infinifats? Where's the clip ultranani? 1 in 100,000 may be a small number, but that number isn't zero. And while we're at it, we're all of us in a way that doesn't focus solely on the thing that makes us supposedly different, that isn't sensationalized, that isn't about how our specific thing equals our entire specific story. Others may want to make our difference all of it, make it take up 100% of our lives 100% of the time, but that's simply not real. Representation is improving. Shows and films out of the UK and Ireland seem to do a particularly good job, but it needs to go faster. I want us to be seen, and in order to be seen, we need to be shown, going about our lives the way we do, because we're people. Producers, call me. I want to see humans like me on runways and covers. Hell, I want to see me on runways and covers. Designers and editors, call me. I want other people who have ever felt that their bodies must be hidden or asterisked or apologized for or shrunken, erased, depleted, deleted to know that they do not. I want them to feel that it is not only okay to be proud of their bodies, it is fucking punk rock. There's safety in numbers. There's comfort in common experience, even when the only thing our experiences have in common is how unique they are. I'm finally proud of my body and of me, deformity and all. Not every day, not every second, but most of the time, yeah. As a writer, I make sense of the world with words. I'm going to tell you how I made sense, how I'm still making sense of mine. It was a long road to get here, and a scattershot one, so strap in. I hope you like digressions. And parentheses, I mentioned the ADHD, right? I've detoured and doubled back, and sometimes I regress, but never permanently. My journey has not been, will not be, flawless. I'm hoping the things I've learned can give you a shortcut on your own path, or even just the inkling of one. I don't have all the answers, and I'm still learning, but I hope that's reassuring too, in its own way. Thank you. What do you guys want to talk about?
Wow.
Hi.
Well, I'm sure you covered in the book, but
I don't know.
So, did you have siblings? And where are you in that, like, birth order? And how that affected?
That's a great question. I have 2 half siblings, so I never call them that. They're my sister and brother,
Right.
Kara and Michael. But they are 12 and 14 years older than I am. So my dad's first marriage was to their mom. Then they got divorced, and my dad met my mom, and they had me. And we never lived together. So I ostensibly kind of grew up like an only child. There are people I went to high school with here who probably are like, Carla had siblings? Like, it was one of those. We didn't live near each other, but they're a huge part of my life, and they're very important to me. But it's a great question because I think probably is important, because as an only child, or an ostensibly only child, I didn't have a witness to my experience. I didn't have somebody there to be like, is this normal? I didn't have somebody to bounce things off of, or and that's something that I'm not unique in that way. Everybody who grows up, kind of only is like that. And what's really funny is that at the time growing up in the 80s and 90s, I felt like the only person I knew with any element of divorce in my family. Like, it was weird. People didn't understand what half siblings were. I was constantly explaining, like, no, they're not my step siblings, they're my half siblings. We're related by blood. We have the same dad. And now my parents have been married over 50 years, and I feel like I'm one of the only people that like has parents that are still together, So yeah, it's been interesting for them. My sister, when she read the book, was really surprised by a lot. I think she was kind of just like, how did I miss all this stuff? And I don't think that's on her. I think that's on me. I think you don't necessarily talk about the stuff that's really hard and humiliating and potentially embarrassing. But yeah, so they were kind of like, at least in terms of this part of my life, they were pretty separate. Yeah, that's a great question. What else can I tell you guys? Hey, hi.
Firstly, I love how you framed growth in your book and how it's not always linear with body positivity. I mean, I have a stick-thin twin sister who's beach blonde and the complete opposite of me. And your book really just healed
Oh.
the little part of me that, I think every girl sees those models. It's hard to be related to one.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm so happy for her, and this kind of healed that part. But I was wondering, is there any part that you left out of the book? Because I know with editing you pick and choose. Is there anything you wish you could have included?
So first of all, I'm really happy to hear that. So thank you for sharing that. And it's just so crazy to me. Like, you described your sister and you, and it's like the way society, like, I don't think this is a verb, but like hierarchizes us, even though like there's no hierarchy. People are just different looking. Like we just have decided as a society that certain things are the way that like we want to feature and like, so anyway, fuck that. Did I leave anything out? That is like intentionally or just like accidentally?
More of the editing process.
Yeah.
Is there anything you maybe wanted to include but were pressed for time? Anything you wish you could have added after the fact?
Maybe not added. Oh my God, this is such a good question. And now I'm like, why don't I have an answer for this? And I think it's because it took so long to write this book and there were so many iterations of it and there were things that were in it. I mean, I don't think so. I think the short answer is no. I think the stuff that had to be in here made it in here. And that's why editors are so important to writers because, there were certain things, there's that expression, kill your darlings, right? Which is like, you fall in love with a sentence, but like maybe it's not actually important that it's there and maybe nobody else has fallen in love with it and you need to just like write it on a piece of paper and stick it up on your wall instead of putting it in your book. And so anything that my editor encouraged me to potentially scale back or cut, I ultimately agreed with her about and really thought, yeah, that was the right move. So I don't think there's any area of my life that necessarily went kind of untapped. I don't talk about my career, which I've heard like just from people like that's something people are sort of curious about just because I've had this career in media and journalism that completely separate from this story is interesting, right? But it didn't feel, I find that if I'm not excited writing about something, it is not going to be exciting to read about because you're going to feel that. And every time I did try to write chapters on work. And I was like, And I was about to say, nobody cares. I think people do care. I think people would like to hear that. I didn't feel like writing it. I was like, I don't know how this like fits into my story and work is just sort of work, even though I work really hard and I'm very passionate about what I do. But like, that was a conscious kind of like, so yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You said that you've been writing the book, it took you 20 years to write the book on and off. Was there a particular chapter or section that was difficult to write for you?
My parents. Yeah. I didn't have a chapter on my parents for a very, very long time. And at some point, my editor was like, you gotta write about your parents, because I was hinting at it. I was like leaving breadcrumbs. And they were like, this doesn't make sense because you haven't given us any context for it. You talk about whatever, behaviors that like seem nonsensical because there was nothing about our family dynamic. And so that was really hard for me. And I had always been, before I wrote personal stuff, when I was in grad school, I was writing fiction and plays. I was not writing memoir at all. And I had a friend who was working on a memoir about sexual abuse within her family. And she was like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can do this to my family. And I was like, fuck that. It's your story. You write whatever you want. They can deal with it. And that's really easy to say to somebody else who's writing their story. When it came to writing my own, because I am so fiercely protective of my parents and love them so much and like them so much. But also, like, every person had things to say about how they fit into this story. That was the hardest thing to write and the hardest thing to read. And really had to be forced into it. But I knew, again, that's why, I mean, editors, you need them. I knew she was right. Like, how could I tell the story without my parents? They're like a huge piece of this puzzle. But it took me a lot of prodding and a lot of like strong suggesting that I do that for me to do it. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna jump in.
Yeah.
And say, fuck yes, this.
Fuck yes, this.
It's not even really a question. It's just when I read the book and I actually listened to it, and it was so great to hear it in your voice. It was awesome. But when you talk about Weight Watchers and and all that, like decades
Yeah.
of doing this,
Yeah.
and the way that you laid it out, and it was just so clear. It was like as soon as I read it, I was like, I am never going back.
Yeah.
Like it just the way that my mood would change, it would affect everything. It
Everything.
was all dependent on what the scale said that one day of the week, and just the way that you laid it out was so. It was so smart and so obvious, and it took me. It was like from the 90s until now.
Yeah.
To finally get it.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Well, thank you, and I'm sorry. It's
So many of us do.
yeah. The dieting, I think, is kind of the most resonant with people because every single person has been through it. Every single woman has certainly been through it. Growing up where a lot of us grew up in this room, there was a very high kind of importance placed on physical appearance. And when you mentioned, a model, I was thinking about, this is something I cut from the book that I was kind of like, this was a good, why did we leave this graph in? I had this thing about how growing up in the 80s and 90s, we were in the era of the supermodel, right? So we had Cindy Crawford and Christy Turlington and Naomi Campbell and these women whose bodies were just like, I was like, how does that body exist? Like, you've got big boobs, you've got a tiny tush, which then was what people wanted. But you've got I don't understand this body. And that was bad enough because it was like, I can never be that, right? And then along came Kate Moss and all the waifs. And I was like, now we have to be smaller? Like, I don't even understand. And it was like, the goalposts kept shifting. And I knew no matter what, I was never going to hit that, whatever it was that I was supposed to be hitting. And yet, I did it for so long. And I talk about it in the past tense, but as much as I kicked diet culture to the curb, and I write about this in the book, the GLP-1 era has really thrown me for a loop because that's the thing, little me, oh my God, I used to make lists. Oh my God, I would be like, okay, I had to succeed at weight loss. It was like a moral imperative. It wasn't about looking better or feeling better. It was something that I was assigned to do by my parents, by my doctors, by society, and I was failing if I wasn't doing it. And I remember making lists, and on it I wrote Ipecac, and that was something I was gonna try to go buy at like CVS after school one day to see if like I could incorporate Ipecac into my daily life and just throw up and be fit. Like, it was so sick and so encouraged, and it's still so encouraged. And even though we've made strides and, the body positivity movement was something, the fat positivity movement is better, there's still like thinness above all else is the most important thing. And I don't know how to get rid of it. And I don't know that I think it's like, it has to become a personal, you have to like finally be like, I can't do this anymore because I'm not happy. I have anxiety and I'm constantly beating myself up. The actress Camila Mendes actually once wrote something, she was reflecting on having disordered eating in the past, and she said, I finally realized that like there was no magic number I was gonna get to where suddenly I was like, cool, great, okay. Because it doesn't work that way, and it's such a fucking waste of time. It is, and And I wish I were completely done with it, but it rears its head. Yeah, it sucks. I hate it. Hate diet culture. Yeah. Hi.
Hi. Can you talk about something you love? Tell me more about your love of fashion and, and how that's, been throughout your life and, and, how it's brought you joy and frustrations and whatnot. And so tell more about that, please.
Thank you for asking. I love clothes. I was really fortunate because for all my mother's diet stuff, which, listen, she gave it to me because somebody gave it to her, and that's how this stuff happens. But she loved clothes and loved shopping, and she gave that to me. So, like, we'd be home. My dad worked in D.C. half the week. He'd be in D.C. It'd be like 8 o'clock at night. My mom would be like, want to go to Loman's? And I'd be like, yeah. And, like, I didn't know it wasn't normal. Like, I didn't know that, like, not everybody, like the salespeople at Loman's didn't know everybody's name. Like I didn't know that it wasn't like, hi Lisa, hi Carla. We'd head straight to the back room, and I just found joy in clothing and fashion. And I always had like a pretty sure sense of my own style, even though it changed a lot. And it really was a love-hate because, God, when I think about getting a bat mitzvah dress and a prom dress, this is where I think things have gotten so much better. There were no options for me. There was nothing. I wore like a black sheath dress to my prom, which is like the last thing I would, well, I'm wearing one now, but it has bows. This one didn't have bows. Because there was nothing. My bat mitzvah dress had to be custom made, and like some people wanted that. I didn't. I just like wanted, and I just looked like a grape. It was horrific. But, loving fashion, but growing up in a time when it wasn't always accessible to me was, it was a love-hate thing. This is like when I see, every time I see a girl, this is where like one of the things that I think social media has been really great about, and why I have so much hope for like younger generations. Every time I see a girl or boy or non-binary person or any person who isn't stick thin, right, in like a midriff-bearing top and shorts, I'm like, yes. Because that would have never happened when I was growing up and when a lot of us were growing up. It was like you had to have a certain body to wear certain things, and that was just the way it was. And I feel like those rules have really changed, and that's where I like love where fashion has gone. Fashion still, prizes thinness above all else, or not above all else, but there are more options at least. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think I just got really lucky. I think regardless of what body I was born in, I was going to love fashion and love it so much that I kind of didn't care. If the options were like, you're self-conscious about your body, so you could hide it, but you also love fashion, so you could get great clothes, I was gonna get the great clothes. Like I'm too outgoing, and I don't ever want to just like blend. I mean, I had periods of wanting to blend in, but yeah, I think clothes bring joy. And I don't think that's for everybody, but I do think there's an equivalent for everybody. I think that there's something that must bring joy to every person, and you have to figure out what that is, and then you have to just like lean into it, even if the people around you are telling you like this isn't for you. If somebody's telling you like these kinds of clothes aren't for you, you're like, well, you don't get to decide that. I do. And if I can get it on my body, then it's for me. And if I can't get it on my body, I'm gonna make it myself, or I'm gonna find a designer that makes it for my body, because fuck the designers that don't. So fashion. I love talking about fashion. Thank you for asking about fashion. Yeah, but it's complicated, so, yeah.
I'm like you, so I'm gonna like jump around.
Do it.
So you reading that first part of the book triggered me with a bunch of things, like with me growing up with my mom and with my family, and so it was very triggering. So I was trying.
I'm sorry.
No, it wasn't you. No.
Well, it was me, but it was you too.
No,
I mean,
validated me.
yeah.
No, it validated me and my feelings and my experiences. And the second thing is I have two sons. One is 22 and he's neurodivergent, and he has a medical diagnosis since he was 19.
And then my younger son, he's just a pain in the ass like me. But anyway, but he just turned 20, and he just really wanted to go see Chicago. He was involved in tech crew in high school, and so he wants to go, he wants to go, he wants to go. And then I'm like, okay. So then I saw, oh yeah, Ashley Graham. And we wound up seeing it on a Sunday. His birthday was on the 24th. I think it was like the 25th was like the Sunday. It was her last performance.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, she's like a woman who was like, she's like, fuck that. She's like, I'm wearing anything, whatever. And, and she came out
And she's a 16.
Yeah.
That's the thing. In the scheme of things, she's pretty small. You know?
Yeah, and she took off all of her
It's just
makeup.
what we as a society are like, woo,
Yeah,
like.
and she didn't leave her makeup on. She came out barefaced.
Love that.
She wasn't like, I'm going to see a whole bunch of people. Barefaced, but still with the eyelashes. But that was from the show.
Yeah.
You know? And she was gorgeous. And then the third thing is, you know, I didn't know that when I went to school that I was going to have, you know, my son who's neurodivergent. So when I'm working, and then I'm working when I get home. But now I work at a university, and I work in the office for students with disabilities in higher ed. And I liked how it was interesting how you said not disabled but different.
Yeah.
Because even when I think of my son, when I think of many things that under that umbrella
Yeah.
of special education,
Yeah.
that I wouldn't put it under that.
Yeah.
You know, like some people might say that you do have a disability.
Yeah.
But it's
I've never thought of it that way, but a lot of people do.
right, and like I look at my son, he has but like no, he's different.
Yeah. Yeah.
But why do we even have to like
Yeah.
label it?
Right.
You know?
What's so interesting is that on the flip side, I think that labeling can be helpful, my perspective is as a Gen X woman. We are the number of women that I know with ADHD specifically in terms of neurodiversity. The number of women in their 40s with ADHD who were completely missed because we were high achieving, right? When I think about, okay, if it is considered a learning disability, I would have had more time on tests. That could have been game changing for me, because one of the things about ADHD is that novelty is so important. And I never understood. I mean, it is insane to me, insane. And again, this is so common for women my age because we just got completely overlooked because, as I say in the book, we weren't rambunctious little boys who liked to climb things. It just, it manifests differently. And when I think about the fact that my not being able to concentrate in social studies wasn't like a defect, it was, I wasn't interested, not even in the material, but like in the way the material is being taught. I noticed that about myself recently. I was like, I love watching historical documentaries and I love reading historical nonfiction. So I kind of like history. So why did I always do so poorly in social studies?
Because those textbooks were so dry.
I was bored. I was really bored. And so I wasn't able to concentrate and I wasn't able to commit anything to memory. And so that kind of turns into this fable that I told myself and other people told me, which was that I was good at certain things and not good at other things, when I think the truth was really like I liked certain things and liked other things less, but had the system been set up a little differently, had maybe somebody said, maybe you have a learning disability and we need to look at that and adjust the way you are learning or you're being taught or you're taking tests. That could have been, that's one of the biggest things. And that's what I mean by, I think sometimes labels help, but I understand what you mean. You don't want to be boxed in or considered like, oh, you're this or you're that. But I do.
You're fat or you're thin.
Yeah, exactly. You're good or you're bad. You're pretty or not. Like, who the fuck cares? And also, just like, you know, I don't know. It was learning that you have, when you find out something about yourself that has been there the whole time that nobody noticed, it is a trip, because you're like, first of all, how did nobody notice? Second of all, this makes everything in my life make sense. And then there's like grief for what you lost, anger for what people missed, and also like relief, because you finally have this key to understand your life and you're like, I get it now. I understand. And I wasn't failing. I just was, the rules were not set up for someone like me. So Yeah, that's great. I'm glad for your son that he has you and that you understand that about him. Yeah.
I mean, he went out last night and he drank too much. And
I mean, that's just being a teenager.
but,
Or 20 some, not a teenager, but
yeah.
I mean, yeah. We all make those. I've never had too much to drink in my life. So I don't know what you're talking about.
That's a lie.
Okay. there are multiple people in this room that could attest to the fact that that's a lie. Yes, there are numerous people here who could. Lauren probably the most. Lauren, you're the first person I ever threw up on from drinking. Thank you guys so much for coming. I'm so touched that you're all here. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me. And yeah, let's go.